Now, Flutterflow recently released what I feel is one of the most anticipated features to their popular UI no-code app builder, and that is drag and drop functionality. And this essentially opens up so many possibilities, so many things that you can do, and so many different apps that you can build, as well as games too. And so in today's video, we're gonna have a little bit of fun because I want to show you a little game that I built that is actually pretty fun to play, that you can learn from and see how you can leverage this amazing drag and drop functionality in your apps and in your projects. Now, before we get started, as always, all the apps and all the resources that I discuss on this channel, you can view and or clone from our amazing Patreon community. And if you're still not a member of our rapidly growing Patreon community, then you should definitely learn more and hopefully become a member. And you can do so via the link in the description of the video. And so here I am inside of Flutterflow. And before I explain to you exactly what's happening, let me show you a little game that I built. So we're going to go ahead and run it. All right, so here's a game that I built. And the idea here is you have an image here that's broken into different tiles, and then you have these tiles here at the bottom. And so what you need to do is you need to drag one of the tiles and place it on top of one of the tiles so they match up. And this is an image of a mountain here, right? So we have a mountain, we have the base of the mountain, we even have some people there. So we have the, the face of the mountain, the apex, etc., etc. And at the bottom you can kind of see different parts of this image. So here's some people. So what I can do is I can drag and drop it right here, and I can place it here. And if it matches, it stays, right? If I place it somewhere else, it's not gonna go, it's not gonna work, right? If I place it here, nothing happens. And so I can continue kind of working with this image. Let's take a look. So here we have a face of the mountain, and as I'm dragging it, you see it's giving me a hint, right? There's that red border. That means that this is correct. So I can place it there and it sticks. And let's keep going. So here we have some empty spaces, right? So we have the sky. So one of these is going to be there. Okay, there we go. This one might be there. Okay, and here we have, looks like a base of the mountain. This is this right here. We have a face of the mountain. And let's see, now this one is this one. And then looks like we have another part of the mountain here. This one looks this. And then we have the sky. So the sky is, it's one of these, but because they're all the same, one of them is going to work. Okay, so now we were able to successfully connect all the images. Okay, and so we won this round. I also have a couple of other levels, right? This is a multi-level game. So if you click here, and as you can see, we have another image here. And we have a lot more tiles, right? Because previously we were looking at a 3x3 grid. This is a 5x5 grid, right? So we have some tools there, and we can also match them up. So as you can see, we have this thing here, looks like a cup, a metal cup. There we have it. We have this thing here. We have a part of a hammer, and we have couple of other things right there. That's the handle, the hammer's handle. We also have the top part of the gloves, and that matches up perfectly. And then we have the bottom part of the gloves, and I think this should be it right here, and that matches up. And let's see, now we have another tool here. Actually, it's this tool that matches up. Next we have the handle, the hammer's handle here. We have another right there, and we can keep going, right? We can keep working on it and see. We have this tool here, and let's see if we can find it. So it looks like it's right here, and on and on and on, right? We have more tools. Looks like it's this tool right here, and we can kind of keep working, right? We have another tool here. We have another part of the handle. I think this is right here. That works. And we have the bottom part of the handle right here, and that matches up. And then we have this other tool here. I think this should be, yep, that works. And let's see what else, maybe one more. There's a piece there, and here we have a piece of wood. I think that's gonna match up. That's the table, and we can keep working. We can see what else we can do. Okay, that one matched over there. And let's see, we have another piece of wood. I think this is this one right here that matches up, and it's slowly starting to come together. Right, a really cool game. I really enjoyed playing these games. I still do. And we have another level. We have the next level, and this is a 6x6 grid. So we have 36 tiles, and as you can see, this looks like a New York City kind of skyline. Right, New York City. We have these yellow caps here, and we can slowly start to piece it together. So let's see. Let's take a look. So here's a part of a cap that goes in there. Let's see what else we can do. There's a part right here that matches up. Let's see what else. There's some buildings there, and let's see which side of the building. I think it's this one right here that matches up. Next we have the side of one of the taxi cabs, and right there, and we can keep playing until we match up all the pieces. The way this game is designed is that these pieces should eventually match up what we're seeing here. Okay, and so there are different levels. They're completely customizable. You can have, a 2x2 grid if you want. You can have a 3x3. You can have, a 10x10 grid if you want. It's really up to you. And this is actually a pretty fun game. I actually enjoy playing these kinds of games, and you can build a game like this with Flutterflow. And so now that you've seen what this game is and how to play it and kind of this drag and drop functionality, let's jump back into Flutterflow so that I can show you important concepts that went into building this game. Okay, all right, so here we are back in Flutterflow, and let me explain to you some of the most important concepts that you need to understand in order to build a game such as this, because you can take these concepts and use them anywhere, right? You don't have to build a game. You can build an app using these concepts. It's really all about concepts. That's what I want you guys to kind of pick up from this, okay? So we have 3 pages here, and the main difference between the pages is the size of the grid and the image that we're displaying, right? So in this first page, we have a 3x3 grid. On the second page, we have a 5x5 grid, and then on the last page, we have a 6x6 grid with different images on each of the pages. Now, the next thing that I want to show you is we are using grids, right? So we have a grid view here, and we also have a grid view here. So the difference is this is a target grid view. This is where you're going to be dropping the tiles, the image tiles, and this is going to be the source, right? This is where you're seeing those random image tiles. Okay. Now, the most important concept when you're building a game such as this one, or you're building an app that has this functionality, is when you are displaying the images, right? So when we are displaying the images, what we are doing here is we're using this thing here. We're using this box fit, and we're using this second to last option, which is none, right? So what that allows us to do is it allows us to take the image as is, but we can display only a certain part of the image, okay? And this is controlled by this X and Y, okay? So it's this thing here, is this image alignment. And so this allows me to take the same image and just display the tile that's important here, right? And this means I don't need to take an image and cut it up, crop it into different tiles. This is very, very powerful. This is one of the most useful concepts when it comes to building these apps, right? Is that you can use this functionality here, right? This box fit, this none, right? And the next thing that I'm doing here is I am basically generating the coordinates for this grid view. And if you recall, this bottom one basically lists the random image tiles. And so what we have here is this grid view source. We are feeding it with these random image tiles. And what are these random image tiles? And if we come here to our pages, our state variables, we have these random image tiles. And this is essentially a list of the cell position. And what is a cell position? Well, a cell position is a data type that has X1 and Y1. And these are the 2 values that we need to know and we need to set in order to control which part of the image are we going to be showing, right? Because if you take a look at this app here, you can see that all of these images are the same image. It's just we are showing a different part of it, right? So this thing here is this part of the image, right? It's kind of this bottom center, if you will. And this thing here, it's this part, is this bottom right, right? And in a grid view, these have actual parameters, right? So like, for instance, this is 0, 0. But when you go down, it becomes 1. You're increasing, right? So this is 0, 0. This is like 1, 0. This is like 1, 1. And this here is -1, -1. So depending on which part of the image that you want to show, you can explain that using coordinates, right? So if I go back here and we go to the app here and I have this image, right? I can say, well, this grid, I want to show this part of the image. This tile, I want to show this part of the image. This tile, I want to show this part of the image. And that is exactly what's happening, is that we are generating a list of all the possible combinations of the XY coordinates, right? So we're generating this, all of these, and then we're shuffling them, right? So if we take a look at our custom function here, if we come over here and we take a look at this random image tiles, right? It's actually being generated here, right? So we have this random image tiles, and if we come over here, we have an action called get random tiles, and this happens when the page loads. So when the page loads, we take our tiles and we shuffle them, right? We generate a random list of tiles, and it's using this custom function here, right? So if we edit this function, you can see this is what we're doing, and I basically asked ChatGPT to generate it. And for all my Patreon members, I'm also going to make available my ChatGPT conversation, and that way you can see exactly how everything came together. You can see exactly what went through my mind as I was building this app, right? So as you can see, this shuffle here is we are generating the coordinates, right? Essentially, we are generating, we're saying, okay, I want 1, 1, or -1, -1. Then I want -1, 0, or 0, -1. Then I want, -1, 1, etc., etc. And then I'm shuffling them. And as a result, I have a list of positions that are shuffled. And that means if you give it an image, right, an image here, it's going to display different parts of the image, right? That's the beauty of this method, right? We don't need to take an image and we don't need to crop it 9 ways, different parts of the image. We just need a list of coordinates, basically telling Flutterflow, listen, I want you to show me this corner. I want you to show me this corner, then this corner, then this corner, then this middle one, then this center one. That is exactly what's happening. And so this is what's happening here in this grid view here, right? We're generating a random positions, and we're displaying this image here, and we're basically setting these variables as this grid view is being generated. Now this image is wrapped in a draggable, right? Because all of these images, right, they need to be draggable. If you don't wrap it in a draggable, you won't be able to drag. It's just going to be like basically this button here. You see, it's not draggable, but now it's draggable. Okay, and this draggable here, it needs some information so that it can pass to the target, right? To the drag target, right? There are 3 things. You have the draggable, which is something that you're dragging. You have the drag target, which is where you're dragging this draggable. And then you also have the information, and that is, the piece of data that's passed on the draggable to the drag target. And our draggable property is basically a data type called cell position. And this basically, when we drag something, we are essentially passing the coordinates of what we are dragging, right? So this thing here, like for instance, this thing here, it's this position, right? And so when we drag it, we are passing the coordinates, right? We're basically telling this whole thing, hey, I am dragging this one. I'm dragging this one, because it doesn't know. Like if we drag it, it does not know what we're dragging unless we tell it to. It knows where we're planning to drop it, but it doesn't know what we are dragging, right? And that is why when we drag it, we know it. So the system knows where we're trying to drag it, but it also knows what we're trying to drag it, right? Very, very important. And so that is why I basically create this cell position from the source item, right? From this thing here, because they're stored here. And so when we drag it, it's passing those parameters. And that way, this target, this drag target that I'm going to talk about in just a second, knows exactly where we're dropping something and what we're dropping. Basically, it can look at something that we're dragging here and can see, oh, you're dragging the center of the image, but you're not dropping it in the center of this image, which means that you're doing something wrong. You're making a mistake, right? So it can compare. Or on the other hand, it can say, well, you're dragging the center and you're also dropping it on the center. That means, yes, it's going to work. You're doing the right thing. Okay. So we've covered this part here, right? Lots and lots of things to kind of talk about, but it gets a lot more interesting here, right? Because here we have a lot of things happening, right? So first of all, we have here a stack, and that means we can align one widget on top of another. And why do we need to do it? Well, the reason we need to do it is we need to place the original image under this grid view, right? Because as we're dragging, we need to see where to drag it, to drop it. We need to see the actual image. And so this way we can have the image on the bottom because it's first, and then we can have this grid view on top, which is going to be accepting the actual image drops, right? And this grid view target is, we're populating using another custom function called getGrid. And this time we are just generating a sequence of points. We're not shuffling them. We're not doing anything. It's just a sequence of points. And it's important that we do that because when we try to drop something on an image, we need to know exactly what the target is. We need to know what the widget is that we're trying to drop something on top of. And this is this get grid. And so when we feed this grid view target with just a sequence of coordinates, these drag targets will know, who they are. They will know, the coordinates of themselves, because the next thing we're doing is we have a container here and we have an image, and this image here is this part of the image, right? So now we're displaying another image on top of this big image. And the reason we have an image as a drag target in addition to the other image, right, that's underneath, is because we want this cool effect. We want to be able to drag and drop something here, and we want the individual tile to be more visible, because as you can see, the image is kind of faint, and that is because it has a relatively low opacity. But if we drag something, so like for instance, if I drag this here, I wanted to increase in opacity, and the way we do it is by having another image inside this drag target. And then when everything kind of matches up, when the stars align, we want to make the opacity 1, because by default, the opacity is 0, right? Of these little tiles, they're 0. They're not visible. I mean, we can see the big image, but these little tiles, they have opacity of 0 because they don't need to be visible right now, right? And what I have here is I have a really, really nice flow. Is if you take a look at this app here, if you take a look at our page state variables, I have this tiles enabled. And what this is, it's essentially a list of integers representing the different tiles here, and essentially a list. And so this list starts off with zeros. And then if we drop something, we turn it on, right? We basically mark that tile as 1. Okay, so right now it's a tiles enabled, it's just a list. But when we actually drop something, we turn it on, because what we are doing here is, if you take a look at our drag target, lots and lots of magic happening, right? What we are doing is, if this is the correct tile, we dropped it on the right tile. And remember, the tiles can check, right? We have the drag information, and that can check with the drag target if they match up. If it is the correct tile, what we are doing is we are setting one of the integers in the list as 1. They all start off with 0, which means they're all turned off. All the tiles are turned off. But when we drop it correctly and send the correct tile, we set it to 1, right? And so that way, that list is going to have some zeros and some ones. And those ones are going to be in this specific place representing a specific tile, right? So here we find it in the specific place, which is its index, and we set it to 1. Otherwise, we don't do anything, right? Doesn't matter. And because it's set to 1, if we come over here to this image, we have here a check, right? We are checking this thing here, this tiles enabled at a specific location, right? So basically, when we drop it, we check if it's correct, if everything is right, then we basically set its opacity to 1, and that becomes visible. And at that point, you see the actual image, right? These are actual images. It's not this background image, okay? So that is that flow there. And that is why we have this image here as part of the stack, and then we have the grid view. Now, this image has a low opacity. You can kind of change it. You can make it 0.1. You can make it 0.3. I think something like 0.3 would be good. That way it's still visible, but still faint. And that tells the user that they need to drop things, but they can kind of see, right? You don't want to make it 0, right? Because it's not going to be visible. 0.1 is also too low. I think like 0.3 is a nice mix. And that is our UI. Of course, a lot of things happen in this drag target, right? So if you open up drag target, we just have this on drag accept, right? Once, we drop something, it's there. But we also have on drag enter. And what happens on drag enter? We set the active tile. We need to know which tile is active, and that way we can display this red border, right? We know when the tile is active, because we need to know the tile so that we can draw a border around it, right? And so as a result, this thing sets this active tile, and we also have a correct tile boolean, right? So these are like two page state variables that are necessary for the app, because we check with those variables in other logic flows, right? So we set this active tile, this position based on the target, right? Based on where we're dropping it. And we have this correct tile, and this thing has two conditions, right? We're basically checking, does the drag data match up with the drag target, right? So the image, the tile that we're dragging, does it match up with the drag target? Because if it matches up, then everything is good, because that means that, like for instance, these people are going to be here, right? And that means that the correct tile, what do we have it called? Yeah, correct tile is going to be true. And that means that, we can have a lot of, other things that depend on it. So for instance, if we take a look in our container here, we have this border, and that has three conditions, right? Active tile and correct tile, right? So in this drag target, we're basically setting up a bunch of page state variables that are updated continuously. And then here we are checking when it comes to do conditional visibility, right? So in the logic, we set up our page state variables. And then when it's time to do something visual, some kind of a visual effect, change opacity, or, maybe change the fill color, or change the border color, or do something else, we rely on those page state variables, right? So for instance, I'm checking active state here, I'm checking correct tile. All of these need to match up, right? The stars need to align. The active tile needs to be the right one, and it needs to be the correct one, right? Because if I'm dragging stuff, this, it's going to be, these are the active tiles, right? It doesn't mean they're correct. It just means these are the active tiles. But if I drag it on the right one, so for instance, if I drag it, let's say, here, then it's the active tile, but it's also correct. And that's why, the stars align and we see this red border, and that is correct. And that allows me to drop it because, because I have this thing here, because if you open it up, we have this on drag accept, right? So on drag accept, I'm able to update app state, and that turns on the opacity, and that makes that, that gives it this effect, right? Because if I didn't have that, it would be just like this. I would be dropping it and nothing would happen. And we don't want that, right? We don't want, we don't want to just, drop something and not see any kind of effect. We want to be able to drop it and see something cool happen, right? So I can take this and let's see, is it here? Yep, it's here. Okay, so you see that effect. Or let's see, maybe this part of a mountain right here. Okay, so I want to see that effect. And as a result, you have some really nice visual effects that tell the user exactly what's happening. Now, obviously, this is merely scraping the top of the surface, right? It doesn't mean that you need to go out and build a game like this, but drag and drop is absolutely an amazing piece of functionality. And as you can see, you can do a ton of things with it. You can do a lot of things. You can build all kinds of cool board games like chess and checkers. You can build other games, so many things that you can do. And you can also build amazing apps as well. It's just I wanted to have a little bit of fun this time, kind of go back from building apps and try to build a fun game so that we can kind of play it and we can kind of enjoy it and have a little bit of fun. So I talked about lots and lots of things. There's lots of things happening behind the scenes, and really the best way to kind of master this topic and kind of leverage this and put this to good use is by viewing and or cloning this app. And that is exactly what you can do when you join our amazing Patreon community. Because when you join our incredible, rapidly growing Patreon community, we have awesome people there that are eager to learn, eager to exchange advice, eager to help each other out. You're not only going to get access to this app right here, to this cool game that I built right here, you're going to get access to pretty much all my apps that I have built throughout the life of this channel. And so if there's another app that I built in the past, it's probably there. There's over 160 apps at this point, and you can all view and or clone them. You can ask questions, you can get advice. And really, if you're serious about no code, this is the next logical step, because apart from this, you're also going to get access to extra content. So things like Q&A, behind the scenes, and our amazing Patreon supported masterclass series, where I essentially do deep dive videos based on specific topics, apps, or tools that the community wants to learn more about. And these tutorials are a lot more comprehensive than the videos I have on this channel. And I think one of the next tutorials we're going to be doing is either going to be push notifications or drag and drop. I'm going to be covering lots and lots of different use cases. And so if you want to get access to all of this extra amazing content, including the apps, plus when you join our amazing Patreon community, you're going to be supporting this channel and supporting my work. And that is awesome. And I really appreciate it. Well, if all of that sounds like something that you might be interested in, and you feel you're going to gain some value out of all this, then I definitely encourage you to check it out and become a member. And you can do just that via the link in the description below the video.